The sun hung low over Nzuri village, casting golden light over the narrow dirt roads. The evening air carried the scent of burning firewood and roasting maize as women sat outside their houses, chatting and calling out to customers passing by. At the far end of the village, Juma wiped the sweat off his brow as he counted his earnings for the day, a total of 3,000 naira. It wasn't much, but it was enough to buy a tuber of yam and some dried fish. He slipped the money into his pocket, sighing as he locked the wooden doors of his carpentry workshop. He had worked on 3 repairs today, an old stool, a broken door hinge, and a wooden bench, but the pay had been barely enough. Tonight, he had planned to use the money to buy a tuber of yam from the market. His sons, Kojo and Kwame, had been complaining about eating too much rice. "Baba, can't we eat yam again? It's been so long." Kojo, the younger son, had whined just that morning. Juma had promised them he would buy yam on his way home. "I hope the price of yam has not gone higher than 3,000, Juma thought, as he dusted the wood shavings off his clothes. As he rounded the path leading to the small market, something caught his eye. A figure, half sitting, half lying by the roadside, barely visible in the evening light. It was an old man, hunched over, wrapped in torn clothes. His feet were covered in dust, and he clutched a small bag as though it held his last possessions. His frail frame shivered slightly as a cold breeze swept through the village. People walked past without stopping, barely sparing the old man a glance. Juma hesitated. Should he stop and help? He barely had any money on him, yet his heart refused to let him walk away. Slowly, he walked over and crouched beside the man. "Baba, are you all right?" he asked, gently touching the man. The old man lifted his tired eyes to him. I don't know where I am," the man murmured, his voice weak. "I've been lost for days and my strength has failed me." Juma felt a pang of sympathy. He could tell the man hadn't eaten in a while. His hands trembled from exhaustion. Juma inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of his next decision. He reached into his pocket, feeling the 3,000 naira. It was everything he had. He could walk past and go home to his hungry children, or he could help a stranger who might not even remember his name tomorrow. A deep sigh escaped him. "Come," Juma said, helping the man to his feet. "Let me buy you some food." The old man's lips quivered, his eyes filling with relief. "Thank you, my son." They made their way to Mama Seifu's food stall, a small wooden structure where the scent of spicy jollof rice and smoked fish filled the air. Juma placed the money on the counter. "Give Baba food, please." Within moments, a steaming plate of rice and beans was placed before the old man. Juma watched as he ate slowly, savoring each bite like it was the best meal he had tasted in years. The reality of what he had just done hit Juma hard. "I have nothing left, no yam, no money. What will I tell my wife and sons?" But as he watched the man eat, he also felt at peace. When the old man had finished, he wiped his mouth and looked at Juma softly. "You did not have to help me," he said, his voice steadier now. "Yet you did. May the ancestors bless you abundantly." Juma forced a smile, even as worry gnawed at his stomach. "Baba, it is nothing. Where are you going?" The old man sighed and brought out a rumpled piece of paper from his bag. "I am going to Bantama," he said, pointing at the address on the paper. Juma led him outside and carefully described the way for him. Then they went their separate ways. That night, as Juma lay in bed, sleep refused to come. His stomach rumbled, a sharp reminder that he, too, had gone without dinner. He had come home empty-handed, with only a weak excuse about the yam seller leaving the market early. Abena had said nothing, but he knew she saw through the lie. She had simply sighed, given him a tired smile, and made another pot of rice. The boys, Kojo and Kwame, had not been so silent. Juma had forced himself to stay calm, even as frustration gnawed at him. "They are children. They do not understand the sacrifices I make." But even he felt the weight of it all, the endless struggle, the never-ending days of work that never yielded enough. Still, as his eyes finally drifted shut, he remembered the words of the old man, "Sometimes the greatest gifts come when we least expect them." The next few days passed by like every other day, until 1 week later. That fateful morning, Juma hurried off to his workshop and had barely begun working on a broken chair when he heard the commotion outside. Voices were raised in excitement and footsteps rushed toward his shop. Then he heard Kojo's loud, excited voice. "Baba, Baba, come and see." Juma frowned, wiping sweat from his forehead, and stepped outside. His breath caught. A convoy of 3 black SUVs rumbled into the village, their shiny bodies reflecting the morning sun. The engines hummed powerfully, a stark contrast to the rusty old taxis that usually roamed the village. People gathered in clusters, whispering and pointing. Inzuri was a small, quiet village, and sights like this were rare. One of the SUVs pulled up directly in front of Juma's workshop. His heart pounded. What is happening? The back door swung open, and a tall, well-dressed man stepped out, his black kaftan crisp and expensive looking. "Are you Juma?" the man asked, approaching him with an outstretched arm. Juma swallowed nervously. Yes, he replied, reaching out to shake the man's hand. The man studied him, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a sealed envelope. "You have been invited by the elder of the Jabari family. He has requested your presence immediately." The village fell silent. All around, people stared at Juma, murmuring in hushed tones. The Jabari name was quite popular in the area, one of the wealthiest and most powerful families in the country, owners of vast cocoa farms, trading businesses, and real estate empires. Juma's legs felt weak. Why would someone like that want to see me? But why? What does the elder want with me? The man smiled slightly. "You will soon find out." Juma sat awkwardly in the back seat of the SUV, staring out the window as the convoy drove out of Inzuri village. The journey was long, taking them far beyond the familiar dirt roads of his home. They passed endless green landscapes, tall cocoa farms, and well-paved roads leading into another village entirely. Everything felt surreal. His mind raced with questions. What if this is a mistake? What if they meant to call someone else? By the time the car turned onto a private road lined with palm trees, Juma felt like he had entered an entirely different world. They approached a massive estate, surrounded by golden gates and towering mansions. The compound was wide, filled with lush gardens, fountains, and pathways paved with white stones. The cars pulled to a stop in front of the mansions. "I don't belong here," he thought, panic settling in his chest. The man in the kaftan gestured for him to step out. "Come, the elder is waiting." Juma swallowed hard and followed. Inside, the house was even more extravagant than he had imagined. He was led into a grand sitting room, and there, seated in an ornately carved wooden chair, was the old man he had fed 2 nights ago. Juma staggered back, his mouth falling open. "Baba," the old man smiled. "Yes, my son, but I am not just Baba. I am Chief Jabari, the patriarch of this family. You helped me even when you had nothing, expecting nothing in return. You saw a stranger and showed him kindness. I had just gotten robbed that day, and everything I had was taken from me. I had walked for almost 2 days, and nobody had tried to help me until I met you. I cannot repay you for what you did." Juma's heart pounded violently in his chest. He was too shocked to speak. Chief Jabari gestured toward a table where a set of documents and a golden key lay. "You have saved my life, my son, and now I wish to change your life as you changed mine." Juma stared, speechless. "The key is to your new workshop. It is fully equipped with the best tools in the country, and the papers are for a small apartment for you and your family, if you would accept." Juma felt weak. His lips moved, but no words came out. "But, Baba, this is too much," he finally whispered. The chief shook his head. "No, my son. It is exactly what you deserve." Juma's hands trembled as he reached for the golden key on the table. It felt too heavy, too real in his palm. His eyes darted between Chief Jabari and the documents spread before him. This can't be real. A few days ago, he was counting his last naira, struggling to provide food for his family. Now he was being handed more wealth and opportunity than he had ever dreamed of. He swallowed hard. "Chief, I don't understand. I didn't do it for a reward. I couldn't walk away." Chief Jabari leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "And that is exactly why you deserve this." After eating and resting for a while, Juma returned home to his family to share the news with them. He was still shocked and overwhelmed, and he couldn't wait to show them everything. The next few weeks were a blur. Juma moved to the city with his family and started setting up his new home. His brand new carpentry workshop was 5 times the size of his old one, filled with tools he had only ever seen on TV. He still could not believe it all belonged to him. But each morning when he walked through the grand wooden doors, the reality set in a little more. Customers flooded in, wealthy business owners, furniture companies, and even architects in search of a skilled carpenter. He no longer had to worry about feeding his family. For the first time in his life, he could afford to dream beyond survival. A couple of months later, Juma and his family had fully adjusted to their new life, but now he felt a pull. His heart longed for Nzuri village, the place where he had struggled. He couldn't forget where he came from. The next morning, Juma traveled back to Nzuri in a car that was now his own. Not borrowed, not a hired taxi, but his. When he arrived, the village erupted in joy. Children ran beside the car, shouting his name. That evening, the village gathered as Juma shared his story, from the old man he had fed to the moment he stood before Chief Jabari. And then he made a decision that would shape not just his future, but the future of many. "I will not keep this blessing to myself," he announced. "I am opening a carpentry school right here in Nzuri. Young boys and girls who want to learn a skill will now have a place to do so. No one should struggle the way I did." A roar of approval spread through the crowd. Months later, Juma's workshop in Nzuri was up and running. Boys who once had no future were now learning a trade. Mothers who once worried about their sons wandering the streets now had hope. And Juma, the humble carpenter who once struggled to buy a tuber of yam, was now a man whose name commanded respect and gratitude. One evening, as he sat outside his workshop, a familiar voice spoke behind him. "You have done well, my son." Juma turned sharply. Chief Jabari stood there, dressed in his fine robes. "You kept your promise," the old man said, nodding approvingly. Juma smiled, his heart full. "It was never just about me, Baba. Kindness should never stop with one person. It should keep moving forward." The chief chuckled. "Indeed, my son." As the cool evening breeze wrapped around them, Juma realized something. His life had changed not because he wanted riches or prayed for wealth, but because in a single moment, when faced with a choice, he had chosen to be kind.